The great chamber fell silent as the final vote was counted. Captain Jake Morrison stood perfectly still in his blue uniform, watching the alien faces around him. 12 different species sat in a circle, each one more powerful than humanity had ever been. The Zephyrians floated like glowing clouds above their seats. The Korthak warriors sat rigid in their dark armor. The other species watched with cold eyes. Admiral Lisa Parker stood beside Jake, her hands clasped behind her back. She had seen many battles in space, but this felt worse than any fight. They were losing something bigger than ships or planets today. They were losing their place in the galaxy. The tall Zephyrian named Veltar rose from his floating position. His voice echoed through the chamber like wind through empty caves. "The vote is complete," he said. 12 species have spoken, 12 species have agreed. Humanity will be removed from the inner galaxy. Jake felt his jaw tighten. Lisa's face remained calm, but he could see the anger in her eyes. They had come here hoping to find some way to stay. The council had called them here to talk about peace. Instead, they found only judgment. "You have 72 hours, Veltar continued. All human ships must leave. All human stations must be abandoned. All human colonies beyond the meridian line must be empty. Any human vessel found in our space after that time will be destroyed." A Korthak general stood up, his red eyes glowing. "This is mercy," he growled. "Your species has shown nothing but aggression. You expand too fast. You take what you want. You refuse to follow our laws. We could have destroyed you instead." Jake wanted to speak, but Lisa put a gentle hand on his arm. They both knew it would do no good. The decision was made. The galaxy's oldest and most powerful species had decided that humans were too dangerous to keep around. "Captain Morrison," Veltar said, looking down at Jake, "do you understand the terms of exile?" Jake looked up at the floating alien. "I understand that you're afraid of us," he said quietly. "I understand that you'd rather throw us out than deal with us as equals." Several aliens made angry sounds. The Korthak general stepped forward, but Veltar raised a glowing hand. "Your species will learn respect in the Outer Rim," the Zephyrian said. "Perhaps exile will teach you what diplomacy could not." Guards surrounded Jake and Lisa, escorting them from the chamber. As they walked through the corridors of Nexus Prime, Jake looked out the windows at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond, the Meridian Line lay the Outer Rim. It was a place of outlaws and pirates, of dead worlds and forgotten ruins. It was where the galaxy sent its unwanted. The ship that took them back to Earth was quiet. Other human diplomats sat in their seats, staring at nothing. They had all hoped for a different outcome. They had all believed that reason would win in the end. When they arrived at Earth, President Maria Rodriguez was waiting for them. She stood in the landing bay with a crowd of reporters and government officials. Her face was serious, but Jake could see she was not surprised by the news. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said to the cameras, "the Galactic Council has made their decision. They have chosen fear over friendship. They have chosen exile over cooperation, but they have made a mistake." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "They think they are punishing us. They think they are teaching us a lesson. But they have given us something much more valuable than their friendship. They have given us freedom." The next few hours were chaos. News of the exile spread across Earth and all the human colonies. Some people were angry, some were scared, but many were excited. The Outer Rim had always been forbidden to them. Now it would be their new home. Commander Nick Taylor was already preparing the advanced scout fleet. He stood in the command center of the military base on Luna, looking at star maps of the unknown regions beyond the Meridian Line. The Outer Rim stretched for thousands of light years, full of unexplored systems and ancient mysteries. "How many ships do we have ready?" President Rodriguez asked as she joined him. 2,000 warships, Nick replied. 5,000 transport vessels, 300 research ships, and more being built every hour. "How many people?" 50 million volunteers in the first wave. Another 100 million preparing to follow. The president nodded. It was not nearly enough to move all of humanity, but it was a start. The rest would follow as they built new homes among the outer stars. Within hours, the great exodus began. Ships lifted off from Earth, Mars, and 100 colony worlds. They carried families and soldiers, scientists and engineers, farmers and artists. They carried everything needed to build a new civilization. Jake Morrison found himself commanding one of the escort ships protecting a convoy of civilian vessels. As his ship crossed the meridian line, he looked back at the inner galaxy one last time. The council species thought they were getting rid of a problem. They had no idea what they had just created. Lisa Parker stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the last human outpost disappear behind them. The council had given them 72 hours to leave. They had done it in 60. "Where to now, Admiral?" her communications officer asked. Lisa smiled for the first time in days. "Into the dark," she said. "Let's see what the outer rim has to offer." As the human fleet disappeared into the dangerous nebulae beyond the border, none of them looked back. Again. They had been exiled, cast out, thrown away. But they were still human. And humans had a way of turning disadvantages into victories. The council species settled back into their comfortable routines, believing the human problem was solved. They were wrong. The humans were not gone, they were just getting started. 5 years had passed since the Great Exile, and the Outer Rim was no longer the same place. Where once only pirates and outlaws dared to venture, now stood the growing cities and shipyards of the human frontier republic. The transformation was so complete that even the humans themselves could hardly believe what they had accomplished. General Amy Foster stood on the observation deck of New Terra, watching the construction work below. The massive shipyard complex stretched for miles around a captured asteroid, its metal framework glowing with welding torches and cutting beams. Workers in spacesuits moved like ants across the surface, building humanity's new future one piece at a time. "Another batch of destroyers will be ready next week," her assistant reported. "The new design is 30% more efficient than our old ships." Amy nodded, pleased with the progress. These were not like the sleek vessels they had built in the inner galaxy. These ships were built for war, with thick armor and powerful weapons. They had to be tough to survive in the Outer Rim where every system might hold pirates or worse. Down in the research section, Dr. Kevin Barnes was working on something that would have been impossible 5 years ago. His team had found the ruins of an ancient alien city on a dead world, and the technology inside was beyond anything the council species had shown them. "Look at this," Kevin said to his assistant, holding up a small crystal device. "The power output is incredible. If we can figure out how to copy this, our ships will be twice as fast as anything the council has." The ruins were everywhere in the Outer Rim. Ancient civilizations had lived and died out here, leaving behind wonders that the proud council species had either forgotten or never discovered. Humanity was learning from all of them, taking the best ideas and making them better. Captain Rachel Stone guided her exploration ship Endeavour through another uncharted system, her crew scanning for signs of life or useful resources. They had mapped over 300 systems in the past year, alone, finding new worlds and new opportunities at every turn. "Captain," her science officer called out, "I'm reading structures on the third planet. They look artificial." Rachel smiled. Another discovery. Another piece of the puzzle that was helping humanity build something amazing in the darkness beyond the galaxy's edge. "Take us down for a closer look," she ordered. What they found was better than ruins. The planet was home to a species of tall, thin aliens who called themselves the Queller. They were made of living crystal and spoke in musical tones that sounded like bells ringing. More importantly, they were friendly. "We have watched the council ships pass by for centuries," the Queller leader explained to Rachel through a translation device. "They never stopped to speak with us. They acted as if we did not exist. But you humans are different. You listen. You care about what we have to say." The Queller had amazing technology, especially their energy shields. But they were peaceful people who had never thought to use their inventions for war. When Rachel explained what had happened to humanity, the crystalline aliens were shocked and angry. The council cast you out for being too aggressive? The leader asked. But aggression is sometimes necessary. We have learned this from the pirates who steal, from our trade ships. Perhaps it is time we learned to fight back. Within weeks, the first Queller ships arrived at New Terra, bringing their shield technology as a gift to their new human friends. They were not the only ones. Word of humanity's presence in the Outer Rim was spreading, and other species were coming to see what these newcomers offered. The Vrathan were insect-like creatures with powerful mandibles and multiple arms. Their hive queens had ruled small sections of the Outer Rim for generations, constantly fighting off pirates and raiders. When they met the humans, they found kindred spirits. Your species fights like us, Queen Zixara told Admiral Tony Davis during their first meeting. You protect what is yours. You do not run from danger. This is good. We will fight beside you. The Drift clans were nomads who lived on giant ships, never staying in one place for long. They had technology that could make ships invisible and weapons that could strike from impossible distances. They had been alone for so long that they had almost forgotten how to trust others. The council species fear change, their leader told Tony. They want everything to stay the same forever. But you humans embrace change. You make it your friend. This is why you will succeed where they will fail. Admiral Tony Davis commanded the growing human fleet from his mobile command ship Liberty. Under his leadership, the combined forces of humanity and their new allies began to clean up the Outer Rim. Pirates who had terrorized trade routes for centuries suddenly found themselves facing organized resistance. The Battle of Raven's Rest was the first major victory. A pirate fleet that had controlled an entire sector for decades met the human task force in open battle. The pirates expected an easy fight against another group of refugees. Instead, they faced ships with alien shield technology, human tactics, and weapons they had never seen before. The pirate leader surrendered after his flagship was crippled in the first exchange of fire. What are you? He asked over the communication channel. We're the future, Tony replied simply. As news of the victory spread, more alien species came forward to join what was becoming known as the Outer Rim Alliance. Some brought technology. Others brought knowledge of hidden resources or safe passage routes. All of them brought hope that things could be better than they had been. Back on New Terra, President Carlos Martinez signed the Alliance Charter with representatives from 15 different species. The document established trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, and shared research programs. It was the beginning of something the Galacxy had never seen before. The Council thought they were getting rid of a problem, Carlos said at the signing ceremony. Instead, they created a solution, not just for humanity, but for everyone who has been ignored or pushed aside. The transformation was remarkable. In just 5 years, the lawless Outer Rim had become organized, prosperous, and united. The humans had not conquered it by force. They had won it by friendship, by treating other species as equals instead of subjects. And this was only the beginning. 10 years after the exile, the inevitable finally happened. A council patrol fleet crossed the Meridian Line for the first time since humanity had been cast out. Admiral Jexnar of the Korthak Empire led 12 warships into the disputed Tau sector, chasing a group of smugglers who had stolen medical supplies from a council world. The Korthak admiral was confident this would be a simple mission. He had heard rumors about human activity in the Outer Rim, but he dismissed them as wild stories. Humans were primitives who had been barely tolerated in civilized space. 10 years of exile could not have changed that. His confidence began to crack when his sensors detected something unexpected. Where the star chart showed empty space, there was now a massive mining operation. Dozens of ships moved between asteroids, extracting rare metals and crystals. Space stations provided support and coordination. It looked like a major industrial complex. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving a transmission from the mining operation. They're asking us to state our business in their territory. Jexnar laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the bridge. Their territory? Tell them this is council space and they will surrender immediately or be destroyed. But the response that came back was not what he expected. This is Captain Steve Morgan of the Human Defense Force, a calm voice said. You are in violation. of the Tau Sector Treaty. Withdraw immediately or we will be forced to defend our operations. The Korthak Admiral's red eyes blazed with anger. Human Defense Force? There is no such thing. Humans have no authority in this galaxy. That was when the sensors detected the escort ships. 3 vessels emerged from behind a large asteroid, moving with precision and speed that surprised the Korthak crew. These were not the simple ships that humanity had used 10 years ago. They were sleek and deadly, with weapon systems that the Council had never seen before. Captain Steve Morgan stood on the bridge of his flagship Defiance, watching the Korthak ships on his screen. He had been expecting this day for months. Intelligence. Reports had warned that Council patrols were getting bolder, testing the boundaries of the Exile Zone. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the Korthak ships are forming an attack formation. Their weapons are charging." Steve nodded calmly. "Signal the mining ships to move to safe distance. Activate the defense grid." Hidden among the asteroids, automated defense platforms came online. Their weapons were based on Queller crystal technology, modified with human engineering and Vrathan targeting systems. The Korthak ships suddenly found themselves surrounded by firepower they could not match. Admiral Jexnar stared at his tactical display in disbelief. "How many ships do they have?" 12 confirmed vessels, sir," his tactical officer replied. "But the power readings are off the charts. Their weapons are more advanced than ours." For the first time in his long military career, the Korthak Admiral felt uncertain. The Council had always been supreme in space combat. Their technology was thousands of years more advanced than anything younger species could produce. Yet these human ships seemed to ignore that basic fact. "Open a channel," Jexnar ordered. "This is Admiral Jexnar of the Korthak Imperial Fleet. You will stand down immediately and prepare to be boarded." Steve's response was polite but firm. "Admiral, you are outnumbered and outgunned. This is your final warning. Leave our space now." The Korthak Admiral's pride would not let him retreat. "Attack," he ordered. The Battle of Tau Sector lasted exactly 17 minutes. The Council fleet opened fire with their traditional plasma cannons and missile systems. The human defenders responded with weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Queller crystal beams sliced through Korthak armor like paper. Vrathan bioweapons disabled entire ships by disrupting their computer systems. Drift clan phase. Cannons struck from impossible angles. The Korthak flagship took a direct hit from the Defiance's main weapon, a hybrid cannon that combined human engineering with alien technology. The massive dreadnought, pride of the Korthak fleet, was crippled in a single shot. "Impossible," Admiral Jexnar whispered as his ship's systems failed around him. "No one can defeat the Council fleets." But the humans were not done. Instead of destroying the defeated ships, they offered mercy. Medical ships arrived to help the wounded. Rescue teams worked to save Korthak crews from damaged vessels. It was a kindness that the proud Korthak had never shown to their enemies. Steve Morgan boarded the crippled flagship to accept the Admiral's surrender in person. The Korthak leader looked at him with a mixture of rage and confusion. "What are you?" Jexnar demanded. "The humans we exiled could never have done this." Steve smiled sadly. "We're the same humans you threw away 10 years ago. We just found better friends." News of the victory spread through the outer rim faster than light. Species that had lived in fear of Council retaliation for centuries suddenly dared to hope. The mighty Korthak fleet, symbol of Council power, had been defeated by a handful of human ships and their alien allies. Queen Zixara of the Vrathan was the first to respond. "The Council bleeds," she announced to her warriors. "They can be beaten. We pledge our entire hive fleet to the human cause." The Queller Harmony offered their most advanced shield technology. The Drift clans shared their secret navigation routes. Even species that had never allied with anyone before began to reach out to the Human Defense Force. On New Terra, President Carlos Martinez received reports from across the Outer Rim. Everywhere, alien species were rising up against Council oppression. The victory at Tau Sector had become a symbol of hope for the forgotten and the exiled. "Sir," his military advisor said, "General Amy Foster is requesting permission to begin Phase 2 of the Liberation Plan." Carlos looked out at the stars, thinking about how much had changed since the exile. Tell the general she has full authorization. It's time to show the council what exile really taught us. The first clash was over, but the real war was just beginning. 15 years after the exile, the Outer Rim Federation had become the most powerful force the galaxy had ever seen. What started as a group of desperate refugees had grown into an empire that controlled hundreds of star systems and commanded the loyalty of over 30 alien species. Fleet Admiral Janet Hughes stood in the command center of the massive battle station Vanguard, watching the final preparations for Operation Stormfront. The largest military campaign in human history was about to begin, and she would be leading it. Around her, officers from a dozen different species worked together, planning the assault that would change everything. All fleet groups report ready, her chief of staff announced. 2,000 ships are in position across 12 target systems. Janet nodded grimly. The Federation had been preparing for this moment for 5 years. The Council's attack on the Tau Sector mining operation had been the spark, but the fire had been building much longer. Too many species had suffered under Council rule. Too many worlds had been ignored or exploited. It was time for change. The Council species had grown soft during their centuries of unchallenged power. They still believed they were dealing with the same primitive humans they had exiled 15 years ago. They were about to learn how wrong they were. At exactly noon, Federation Standard Time, the attack began. 12 Council outposts along the Meridian Line came under simultaneous assault. The Federation fleet struck with precision and overwhelming force, using tactics the Council had never seen before. The Battle of Haven Station was typical of what happened that day. The Council garrison, made up of Zephyrian patrol ships and Korthak heavy cruisers, expected to face a small raiding force. Instead, they found themselves fighting a combined fleet of human destroyers, Vrathan bioships, and Queller crystal cruisers. Commander Ryan Clark led the stealth attack on the station's defense grid. His ships used DriftClan phase-shifting technology to slip past the energy shields undetected. The Council defenders never saw them coming until it was too late. "Target the command tower," Ryan ordered as his squadron materialized inside the station's perimeter. "Disable their communications first." The attack was over in minutes. The station's weapons went silent. Its shields collapsed and its garrison surrendered without firing a shot. Across the border, similar scenes played out at every target. The Council's first line of defense crumbled like sand, but the real test came 3 days later at the Kepler Junction, the most important hyperspace nexus near the border. Control of the junction meant control of access to a dozen systems. The Council could not afford to lose it. Admiral Paul Turner commanded the Federation assault fleet, while the Council sent their finest commanders to stop him. 3 different alien species worked together for the first time in centuries, putting aside their ancient rivalries to face the common threat. The Council fleet was impressive. Massive Zephyrian battleships floated like glowing clouds, their energy weapons crackling with power. Korthak dreadnoughts bristled with armor and missiles. The crystalline vessels of the Nexari species moved in perfect formation, their hulls reflecting starlight like mirrors. "Sir," Paul's tactical officer reported, "enemy fleet strength is estimated at 400 ships. They outnumber us 2-1. Paul smiled confidently. "Numbers aren't everything. Signal all ships to begin the attack." The Battle of Kepler Junction lasted 6 hours and became the most important space battle in galactic history. The Federation fleet fought with a coordination that amazed even their enemies. Human ships provided the backbone of the attack, while their alien allies contributed specialized capabilities that the Council had no defense against. Vrathan hive ships released swarms of biofighters that overwhelmed Council point defenses. Queller energy shields protected Federation vessels from the heaviest attacks. DriftClan ships appeared and disappeared like ghosts, striking from unexpected angles. The turning point came when the Council flagship, a massive Zephyrian command vessel, broke through the Federation line. For a moment it looked like the tide might turn. That was when Commander Linda Shaw made her choice. Her cruiser Redemption had taken heavy damage and was barely holding together. Instead of retreating, she ordered full power to the engines and aimed straight for the enemy flagship. "All hands, this is the captain," she announced over the ship's communication system. "It's been an honor serving with you. Tell them back home that we did our duty." The Redemption slammed into the Zephyrian flagship's command section at full speed. Both ships disappeared in a brilliant explosion that lit up space for thousands of kilometers. The sacrifice shocked both fleets into momentary silence. Then the Council fleet began to retreat. Without their flagship and its commanding admiral, the alliance between the three species fell apart. Each group tried to save their own ships, abandoning their allies to the Federation advance. As the smoke cleared, Paul Turner surveyed the battlefield. The Federation had won, but the cost had been high. Too many good people had died to secure this victory. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving surrender requests from the remaining Council ships. They want to discuss terms." Paul looked at the debris floating in space, thinking about Linda Shaw and all the others who had given their lives for this moment. "Signal the fleet," he said finally. "Accept their surrenders. Treat the prisoners well. We're not conquerors. We're liberators." The news of the Federation victory at Kepler Junction sent shockwaves through the inner galaxy. For the first time in thousands of years, the Council faced the possibility of actual defeat. The species that had ruled the galaxy with arrogance and pride now trembled at the thought of human revenge. But they misunderstood what humanity wanted. The Federation had not come for conquest or revenge. They had come to build something better than what had existed before. The galaxy was about to learn that the greatest human strength was not their ability to destroy, but their ability to unite and create. The storm had broken, and nothing would ever be the same. 20 years had passed since the Great Exile, and the galaxy was completely transformed. The species that had once cast humanity into the darkness now knelt before them, begging for mercy in the same chamber where they had pronounced judgment. 2 decades earlier, Supreme Commander Helen Ward stood where Captain Jake Morrison had once stood, but everything else had changed. The circular chamber of Nexus Prime was filled with Federation officers from dozens of different species. Human, Vrathan, Queller, and Drift Clan representatives sat side by side as equals, while the former Council leaders waited nervously for their fate to be decided. The old Zephyrian leader Veltar floated before Helen, his once bright glow now dim with age and defeat. His voice, which had once echoed with arrogant authority, now shook with fear. "Commander Ward, we surrender unconditionally. We ask only for mercy for our people." Helen looked at the alien who had sentenced her species to exile. She could have been angry. She could have demanded revenge for all the years of suffering. Instead, she felt only sadness for how much time had been wasted. "The age of the Council is over," she said quietly. "But the age of cooperation is just beginning. The Federation offers membership to all species willing to embrace equality and mutual respect." The other former Council leaders shifted nervously. They had expected death or slavery. The offer of partnership confused them. After centuries of ruling through fear and dominance, they could not understand why the victorious humans were showing kindness. A Korthak general, his red armor dulled by defeat, spoke up hesitantly. "What are your terms? What do you demand from us?" Helen smiled sadly. "The same thing we asked for 20 years ago. To be treated as equals, to have a voice in galactic affairs, to be judged by our actions, not our origins." The Treaty of New Horizons was signed 3 days later, in the same chamber where humanity had been exiled. The document established the United Galaxy Federation, a new government based on representation, through contribution, rather than ancient privilege. Every species, regardless of age or power, would have a voice proportional to what they brought to the common good. President Sandra Bell spoke to the galaxy from the Federation capital on New Terra, her words broadcast to every inhabited world. "Today marks the end of an era of fear and the beginning of an age of hope. The old barriers between inner and outer galaxy are dissolved. The old systems of privilege and oppression are finished. We are all citizens of the same galaxy now." Former council species struggled to adapt to their new reality. Some, like the proud Korthak, resisted the changes and found themselves isolated and ignored. Their military might, once feared throughout the galaxy, seemed pitiful compared to the combined strength of the Federation. Others embraced the transformation. The scholarly Vorthan, who had always been treated as junior partners by the Council, threw themselves into Federation research projects. Their ancient libraries and vast knowledge proved invaluable in exploring the mysteries of the galaxy. The Zephyrians, despite their former arrogance, possessed incredible energy manipulation, technology that the Federation needed. In exchange for sharing their secrets, they were given prominent positions in the new government's science division. Even some of the smaller species that had supported the Council found places in the new order. The Federation judged them by their willingness to change, not by their past mistakes. Captain Eric Stone, now an elderly veteran with gray hair and tired eyes, commanded the first joint exploration mission into the Galactic Rim. His crew included humans, Vrathan, Queller, former Council species, and a dozen others working together as one team. Captain, his science officer reported, "We're detecting artificial structures in the next system. They appear to be of unknown origin." Eric smiled, feeling the same excitement he had felt as a young officer exploring the outer rim. "Set course for the structures. Let's see what new friends we can make." The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology or their ships, but their ability to see potential in others. Where the Council had seen threats to be eliminated or subjects to be controlled, humans saw partners, waiting to be discovered. The transformation was remarkable. Trade routes that had been controlled by single species for millennia became open highways for all. Research projects that had been hoarded by the Council were shared freely throughout the Federation. Worlds that had been stripped of resources were helped to rebuild and prosper. The Outer Rim, once a place of exile and hardship, became the economic heart of the new galaxy. The shipyards of New Terra produced vessels for 100 different species. The research stations scattered throughout the region made discoveries that benefited everyone. Young beings from across the galaxy came to study at Federation academies, learning not just science and technology, but the arts of cooperation and understanding. They returned to their homeworlds as ambassadors of the new way of thinking. Queen Zixara of the Vrathan, now an old matriarch, often spoke to these students about the early days of the Alliance. "The humans taught us something we had forgotten," she would say. "That strength comes not from standing alone, but from standing together." The Drift clans, no longer nomads but valued citizens of the Federation, used their knowledge of hidden routes to open new regions of space for exploration. Their children grew up on permanent stations, something unthinkable in the old days. As the 20th anniversary of the Exile approached, President Sandra Bell stood before the Federation Assembly, looking out at representatives from over 200 different species. The chamber that had once held 12 arrogant council members now hosted a truly galactic government. 20 years ago, "We were cast out in shame," she said. "We were told we were too aggressive, too dangerous, too different to belong among civilized species. Today we have proven that diversity is not a weakness but a strength, that differences are not divisions but opportunities." She paused, thinking about all those who had not lived to see this day. Jake Morrison, who had died defending a Queller colony from pirates. Lisa Parker, who had given her life exploring a dangerous nebula. All the brave souls who had built this new world with their sacrifice. We have shown the galaxy that exile can become exploration, that rejection can become renewal, that the thrown away can become the foundation of something greater. The humans who were cast into darkness have brought light to every corner of the galaxy. The assembled representatives rose as one, beings of 100 different shapes and sizes united in common purpose. The applause echoed through the chamber for long minutes, a sound of celebration that carried to the stars themselves. Humanity had conquered the galaxy not through force, but through friendship. They had won not by destroying their enemies, but by turning them into allies. The exiled had become the leaders, not through arrogance or dominance, but through the simple recognition that every species had something valuable to contribute. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly as it should be.